Let's do this!
Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Bryan Lomax's Movie Talk.
Oh!
Don't turn it off.
So any guys out there will relate to this, but you know how every guy at some point when they've been learning to ride a bike, their foot will slip on the pedal and you'll right on the crossbar, your nads will feel like they've gone up into your throat, you'll get that kind of line of nerve pain that kind of shoots through your stomach, and you kind of feel for a few moments like you want to die, like it would actually be better, sweeter to you to die than the pain of your nads hitting that crossbar. Well, I would rather go through that than having gone through this year's 31 on 31. Yes, that's right, it's that time of year when we do 31 on 31. We rank 31 movies on the 31st of October. In the horror vein, usually with a theme of some sort, and this year we got lumbered with torture porn. Yeah, with kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. I dread to think what could possibly come after this, quite frankly. But yeah, this year it is Hostel, it is Saw, it is Hellraiser, and it is Wrong Turn. As per usual, it's not just me doing this, it is also Chandler, Cody Leach, Wiliscredia, and joining us for the first time this year is Rudy over at GenEXReviews. So yeah, 5 of us, 5 31 on 31 rankings. This was painful, it really was. Number 31 for me is Wrong Turn 6, Last Resort. And this was the last resort of a dying franchise by this point. Oh dear, man. A lot of these are going to bleed into one, it's got to be said. A lot of these movies, particularly when we get to the Hellraiser movies, I might say some stuff in regards to what happened in the movie, and I guarantee somebody's going to call me out on it and say, no, that didn't happen in Bloodlines, that happened in Judgment. And it's like, well, yeah, fair enough. They all bleed into one. And yeah, Wrong Turn 6 is very much the bottom of the barrel. I couldn't honestly tell you what happened in it all that much. I just remember some really dodgy sex scenes, incestuous kind of stuff, shoddy production values, like it was shot on a camcorder by someone who'd never had any training, and the acting was awful. And I think I could probably apply these comments to at least the next 6 movies, 7 movies, 12 movies, I don't know. Let's see. Let's keep going. Number 30 is Hellraiser Deader. This is one of 3 Hellraiser movies directed by Rick Bota, and it pains me to think that because I've seen all 3 of his Hellraiser movies in this past month, by the end of the year, when I get my letterboxed year in review thing, it's probably going to say, yes, Rick Bota is one of your most watched directors. It's also going to say Doug Bradley is your most watched actor. Not through choice. Honestly, I couldn't tell you why this is at number 30 at this point, because I've slept since and honestly can't remember that much. I know there's a reporter, she's investigating some stuff, and people in this franchise just randomly open the configuration, the lament configuration box, even though there's no real reason for them to. I feel like maybe it was expressed in either the first film or the second film or the third film. One of the films, it was expressed, I think, that it kind of calls you to open it and you just can't resist. But I don't know, I feel like that dilutes an element of what the franchise should be about, which is that we choose our own hell. We choose to go there. But then that begs the question, why would anybody choose to go there? And this whole franchise spends so much time of having people choosing to open this box, seemingly. And it's just, really? I know there's some sadomasochists out there, but really? Anyway, reporter going round and looking into this group of people called Deaders, who for some reason are trying to get in touch with Pinhead or whatever, and they can't die. We don't know why they can't die. We know that they just do some kind of ritual, which means they can't die. But never at any point are we shown how or why, or there's a vague attempt, I think, at some point to tell us what the plan of this leader of the Deaders is, but I'm no clue. I get to the end, I've no clue what's just happened. I don't know why any of this stuff that has taken place has taken place. There is a small role for British actor Mark Warren in it. He is clearly the actor in the film. Everyone else is just like plucked from the street, I can only imagine. Kari Huora, who I've only seen previously in The Hitcher 2, didn't like her in that. I thought she was very lacking in the acting abilities. She brings that same lack of acting ability to this role. There's an effective sequence where there seems to be what looks like a dead woman sat on the toilet who's kind of, it looks like she's killed herself or something, and she's got to get past this dead woman to get to something, and that's kind of effective. I thought that was well done, but beyond that, everything's just meandering. It's this reporter meandering through things without any reason for stuff, and she makes connections in this case that I wouldn't make because there's seemingly no kind of connective tissue that would allow her to make those connections, and yet she does somehow because the film needs her to. Like I say, I get to the end, I've no clue what's happened. At number 29 is Hellraiser Hellseeker. This has, shall we say, building blocks of what could potentially be a good Hellraiser movie, but it feels like it is the building blocks for a very good short Hellraiser movie, like a fan film. Like if this was like a half-hour fan film, he took some of the stuff at the beginning, most of the stuff at the end, tiny segments from everything in between, and it would make a pretty decent fan film. But it feels like they realise we only have enough story for a half-hour film, so let's pad out the rest of it with all these crazy visions. And if we can try and make them creepy or disgusting enough, then that will justify the running time of this horror movie. And it doesn't. It's a lot of repetition. Somebody gets tortured, this guy gets to blame, this guy played by Dean Winters. Someone else gets tortured and killed, he gets to blame. Oh, did he do it or did he not do it? It's all leading to this inevitable twist that you see coming a mile off. Like, you know, it's just, there's never any question about the main character, who he is, what he's about, because we're told constantly. And so there's no reveal there with regards to who this guy is, and yet they treat it as if it is. It's just, it's dull, it's boring. The Dean Winters is all right in it, performance-wise. He's not a bad actor, but everyone else around him ain't particularly great. Ashley Lawrence comes back as Kirsty Cotton. Who's Kirsty Cotton, Brian? Well, she's the main character from the first two movies. First three movies? Two, three? I can't remember. Like I say, it all bleeds into one. I don't know what's what with this franchise. But I didn't even know who she was in this film. So the film starts with this kind of opening where she's killed off. So it had been several weeks between me having seen the first three films and then watching this one. I didn't recognise who this actress is because she's so unremarkable with regards to talent. She does nothing to make me remember her. You know, I watched the first three Hellraiser films, I go to sleep at night, I wake up in the morning, I couldn't tell you who this person is if you show me a picture of her. So she pops up as this random character at the start, and I had no clue. Oh, this is the return of the main character, a legacy character. I had no clue. So we get to the end of the film, we get to a certain twist, certain reveal as to what's going on, and I'm like, I've lost my way now. I've lost my way. This is a film that requires you to have a knowledge of previous movies. But given that previous movies are so convoluted and half the time don't do a particularly good job of giving you all the facts, it just got lost in the mire. And number 28 is Wrong Turn 5, another film with Doug Bradley in. It's just like, man, it's going to really screw up my letterbox. I did not like this film. It is sick and twisted in all the wrong ways. Whoever made it seems to think that, okay, horror fans want violence, so let's give them violence, and that's it. Okay, cool. It's like you got one character in the film that's even remotely approaching someone I care about, and you seemingly don't care about them as the filmmakers. It's just, they may be the last in the line of cannon fodder, but they're still cannon fodder. And it plays in such a way that I feel like by the end of the film, we're supposed to go, yeah, our Wrong Turn hillbilly boys got their men and women. And I'm like, who is this film for? Number 27 is Wrong Turn 4, set pretty much entirely in a really dull location, which is this abandoned mental hospital. It's kind of set up as a prequel that's going to show you the history of the boys, but it doesn't. It just has an opening sequence set way back, which explains this location, which is literally all it's for. So, bloody beginnings. It's dull. It's pornographic at times. The morality of our central characters is pointing south on the compass. We have titillation in there. It's almost winking at the audience, inviting you to come along. I don't want to come along, okay? Some people may think it's cool to have a threesome or whatever, or suggest a threesome. I don't. So the moment a couple of characters make that suggestion, I'm like, yeah, I don't care about you. I just think you need a lesson in morality. I don't know. I don't like the film. I think it's vulgar. It's mean-spirited. Number 26 is Hellraiser Hellworld, another Rick Bota classic. This one stars Lance Henriksen and Henry Cavill. They're good actors, and there are moments in this where you can tell they are clearly the best actors in the film, but it ain't enough. It really ain't enough. Now, I know that a lot of these sequels, a lot of these Hellraiser sequels were not even Hellraiser movies. They were just movies where the studio took a script that was on the shelf, just went, stick Pinhead in it, and we'll put it out as a Hellraiser movie. I don't know if this was one of them, but either way, whether it was or it wasn't, I just feel like these movies were mostly written in a day. Guys, go and let yourself in a room. As long as you come out with something by the end of the day, we'll start rolling cameras. If we've got a scene we can picture in our heads that would be horrific, we'll throw it in there at random, and we'll just pass it off as a dream. We can have anything happen, and then a character can just go, ah! And then we'll drag that out for 90 minutes. We'll do a setup that suggests a story. We'll have a conclusion that kind of wraps up what we got in the setup. But yeah, like I say, most of these Hellraiser movies are short films extended into a 90-minute runtime. And half the time I don't know what's going on. Lance Henriksen tries his best, but I feel like even he looks confused half the time as to what he should be doing. Love the guy, great actor, and it pisses me off that he ends up in crap like this. Number 25 is Saw 3D, otherwise known as Saw 7. Always confuses me because whenever they call something such and such 3D, I always expect it to be the third film in the franchise, which is why they've capitalised on the 3D angle. So whenever I see Saw 3D, I've always got to remember, oh, that's not Saw 3, is it? No, it's Saw 7. They just decided to go 3D. It's very confusing, but not a good film. Definitely the worst of the Saw bunch. By this point, they were really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Not only is it far too convoluted in trying to figure out timelines and when all this is supposed to take place and who's involved with what. There's one character going round seemingly doing detective work but never actually doing detective work. He just appears at crime scenes. We see flashbacks and then it's like, oh, so he's figured that out, has he? It's crap. There are certain traps in this, like one at the start where it's in the middle of the street and it's like a big glass box with people, and you're just thinking, how did that get there? I'm sorry. These killers are clever, but come on. It's in the middle of a city street. The logistics of that are ridiculous and totally unbelievable. Suspension of disbelief is pushed way too far. For this kind of movie, just no. Sorry, but no. Again, it's at this point, it's just traps. Let's put a trap up, kill someone. Let's put a trap up, kill someone. Let's put a trap up, kill someone. And by the end of it all, I'm done. I'm wasted. I feel like I've run a marathon and I've had enough. Number 24 is Hostel Part 3, a straight-to-DVD sequel that is this low by virtue of the fact that it essentially just rehashes what we did in the first two movies. The second movie pretty much rehashed what they did in the first movie. It just added one new aspect of showing us half of the story from the killer's perspective. It's fair enough, okay, but I think by that point, you've done all you can do with a franchise like that. So here, yeah, we essentially just rehashed the first two movies, but on a lower budget with less talent, which is really saying something, because let's face it, the first two movies aren't chock full of talent. It's depressing. It's depressing even talking about these movies, quite frankly. I feel like I'm owed compensation. Yeah, okay. Number 23 is Hellraiser Revelations. I'm struggling, guys. I really am. It's been a while since I've watched these. I didn't review them when I'd watched them, so it's hard to kind of go back and see what my thoughts were. All I can do is look at the grade I gave it on Letterboxd and then try and jog my memory with what it says about it. But I honestly can't remember a lot about this. Based on what I've read on the Letterboxd thing, from what I remember it ending in some rich people's house. One of the sons was... They swapped bodies, did they? Did he do a body swap? I can't... The fact that I can't even remember this film suggests it shouldn't be this high up. But, yeah, what happened? I know that Doug Bradley didn't play Pinhead. I know that much. The guy who did play him wasn't that great. Kind of looked like he had a double chin. It was a bit, yeah. And number 22 is Hostel Part 2. It just, yeah, more of the same. There's one particular sequence when a woman is killed by this other woman, and it's just, I was out. Number 21 is Hellraiser 2. This is gonna quite a shock to a lot of people, I think, just because everything I read about Hellraiser fandom, people say, oh, the first three are good, and then everything goes downhill. No, this film felt like it was trying to be a Nightmare on Elm Street. We got, you know, the main character gets pulled into hell, from what I remember, and then we spend the back end of the film in like a, yeah, like I say, it felt like it was a Nightmare on Elm Street, but instead of Freddy, we got Pinhead, and there's all this mythology around hell going on that as a Christian I just didn't relate to. I didn't find it helpful. I didn't care about anything that was going on. The carryovers from the first film didn't feel like they were fleshed out enough to warrant coming back. It just felt like we're doing a sequel because the first one was successful, and if we're doing a sequel then we've got to bring the characters back from the first one, so we've got to give them something to do. But what we give them to do just ain't that interesting, and the film kind of disappears up its own ass by the time you get halfway through. At number 20 is Hellraiser Judgment. Once again, we get a different actor playing Pinhead. I feel like this version's a bit better than the one we got in whatever the hell the film was. Was it Hellseeker? See, just talking about them now, I'm confusing myself. I can't remember what happens where. I know this is one of what seems to be many Hellraiser movies involving detectives who look like they kind of are wandering through a budget, low-rent version of a David Fincher film. You know, they've got grand aspirations to be like Seven, but instead they end up being a really bad episode of Homicide Life on the Streets with Pinhead thrown in. I just not. I can't remember enough about it to say much more. I know there was a female detective that helps these other two detectives. Are they brothers? I think they were brothers. Did one of them have an affair or something? This is a memory game. You're just going to sit here watching me do a memory game, basically. Let's see how many details. Take a shot every time I get a detail right. Okay? There's a female detective in it. She's sent by another police force to check out these two detective guys to make sure they're doing their job properly. One of them is having an affair with the other guy's wife, is it? And then the other detective turns out to be the killer, I think. I don't know. That's one of the Hellraiser movies. Whether it was this one is anybody's guess. At number 19 is Saw 6. And so Saw 4, 5, 6 and 7, they all kind of bleed into one. A bit like the Hellraiser movies. They all, like Saw 1 to 3, I have distinct memories of. I feel like there is a plot in each of them that kind of ties all three movies together. Saw 4, 5, 6 and 7, it became about the traps, it became about the grisliness, it became about the torture porn, and it really does all bleed into one. Not helped by the fact that each film kind of jumps back in time and is all over the place and or runs congruent with each other, and I never know which order they're supposed to be viewed in. We don't even have Jigsaw as the main killer in this, although I think he does pop up as a corpse. I don't know, or on a videotape. It's so unmemorable. That's the thing. It's like there's nothing in it to distinguish it from the rest of the movies in the franchise. I just can't. I go off my Letterboxd score. I can't remember the film at all. But based on my Letterboxd scores, this is where I've put it in regards to the other Saw movies. Can I tell you anything about it? No. There's no Jigsaw. There was no Amanda. It was that detective guy that took over as the main killer. That's it. That's all I remember. Number 18 is Saw 4. As I say, other than it having very similar Roman numerals to Saw 6, except they're just flipped around, that's about all I can tell you that distinguishes between the two. This is the first one with kind of Detective Hoffman taking over as the main guy. I can't remember if that was the twist at the end though, or whether, yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? So, yeah, spoilers. It's not great that I can't even remember it. Hoffman took over. There was some detectives doing detective work. It's a Saw film, so that generally means there's not much actual detective work going on. Traps, deaths, grisly stuff, business as usual. At number 17 is Hostel. I'm on the verge of crying, guys. Seriously, like I'm at a tipping point just talking about these films. This might be my last 31 on 31. It might be. It's got to be said. I've had to up my antidepressants over the past month or so. It's not The Sound of Freedom. We're not watching a documentary kind of take on the world of human trafficking. The primary aim is to put violence on screen and call it entertainment. And for me, it's not entertaining. And number 16 is Hellraiser Bloodline. And obviously every horror franchise at some point needs to go into space. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, this is the one where we go into space. So it jumps from past, present and future. The future being in space. Somebody trying to unleash Pinhead on a spaceship. And the film kind of shows us why. There is at least some attempt at a story. There is some attempt to explain the origins of the Lament configuration box. It's just not interesting, and the characters aren't engaging, and the set looks like it's made out of balsa wood. Cheap. More happens in this one from a story standpoint, I guess, than what happens in most, but I still don't care. It doesn't do enough to make me care. Number 15 is Wrong Turn 3, Left for Dead. Now, while I cannot call this a good film in all good conscience, there was fun to be had. Now, while there is violence in it, and that's not necessarily my bag, usually because it's done to people that aren't deserving of such a level of torture being brought upon them. They're always guilty of some kind of minor indiscretion, but I always feel like, all right, does that warrant them being tortured in the ways that they do? What this film does is the characters that it puts together are like your worst of the worst. So it's able to have fun with that in the sense that, yeah, you kind of feel like these guys deserve it. And it's like, okay, who's going to come out on top against a bunch of hardened criminals and a bunch of inbred cannibals? And there's some fun to be had with that, because you don't really care about these characters. You don't need to care about these characters. You're just going to have fun with the action, because it is more action orientated, this one. Despite the low budget, yeah, there's an attempt there to make this a bit more action packed. There's fight scenes, there's explosions, there's car crashes, bus crashes. So it's like, yeah, all right. Is it good? No, it's not, but I have fun. And number 14 is Hellraiser Inferno. Now, this is directed and written partly by Scott Derrickson. Now, I feel like this was maybe not a Hellraiser film, but they took an early Scott Derrickson kind of script and made it a Hellraiser film and let him direct. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what it feels like at any rate. Again, it's not a good film, and I wouldn't even say it was an entertaining film, but I do think it is handled by someone who at least has an understanding of spiritual principles, of punishment, salvation, sanctification, all those kind of words that if you're not, religiously inclined, you need to now go away and look up and actually figure out what they really mean. It's well known that Derrickson is a person of faith. He tends to make horror movies that highlight elements, aspects of faith, and I feel like there's an attempt at that here. If you're going to immerse somebody in the world of hell, then let's get to grips with that. Let's get to grips with what hell's all about, who's going there, why exit. So, yeah, again, it's a bit of a muddled mess at times. The main character isn't someone that you identify with or even care about, and the performance isn't great from him. But I do feel like you can see signs there that this is directed by someone who has a vision. That vision was maybe scuppered at some point along the way, but at least he has one. And number 13 is Saw 3. Now, I think it's one of them movies where if you watch Saw 1 to 3 back to back, then this is all right. you know, it's still not a great film, but like you can see where it fits in. It's not a film where if you've not seen a Saw film in a while, you can't just pull it off and go, I think I'll watch Saw 3. Most horror sequels, if you pull number 3 off the shelf, you could probably watch it and it's reasonably well self-contained enough for you to be able to... Saw 3 is like, I have no clue what's going on right now. Who's that character again? How does this relate to the first two? What's the timeline here? And so it's really entrenched in its own mythology at this point, where like, yeah, okay, if I'm going to watch the third one, I've got to go back and watch the first two, because otherwise I'm not going to have a clue what's going on. This was like the starting point of where the Saw franchise... I mean, I've never been a big fan of the franchise anyway, but the first two films I would say are solid, 3-star. They're good. I can watch them, but yeah, all right, nothing more than that. Part 3 is really the tipping point where it started to, okay, you've got nothing else in the bag, have you? This is it. Number 12 is A Wrong Turn 2, Dead End. This is the first film on this list that I would give a 3-star rating. It's not good in the sense that it is a good film that really digs deep into philosophy and character arcs and just makes me want to revisit it. But director Joe Lynch comes to it, you know, straight off the back of the first one, and he goes, okay, this concept's ridiculous, let's play with that. He pinpoints, you know, zeroes in on the ridiculousness of the concept and just cranks it up to 11. And I have fun with it. Avoids the cardinal sin for me of this kind of movie, of not having a survivor. You know, I don't like it when these movies put main characters through the ringer only to not have a single one survive, and it makes you feel like the whole thing was pointless. This film avoids that. It does have, you know, a couple of main characters that overcome the odds, which by the time you've gone through all the junk, it makes you feel like, okay, at least it was worth it. Beyond that, yeah, like I say, all the blood, the guts and stuff, Lynch cranks it up to such ridiculous levels that it becomes funny rather than just sickening. So because of that, I had fun with it. Number 11 is Saw 5, and this film sees Detective Hoffman, who we now know to be the killer, going, you know what? Did I get confused before with Saw 4 or 6? It wouldn't surprise me. Is this the one where he just goes from location to location having flashbacks, seemingly doing no detective work? It could be. Suffice to say, I can't remember much about this film, clearly. Number 10 is Hellraiser 3. I felt like this one had a clearer story. It seemed a little bit more thought out. Terry Farrell, or Dax from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, was a more warm kind of character presence, I guess, that I wanted to follow a bit more than the previous main character. Yeah, it touches a little bit too much on notes of blasphemy at times for my liking, but given where that blasphemy is coming from, it makes sense within the context of, you know, clearly something from hell is not going to be particularly favourable towards God. So it makes sense, but it still rubs me the wrong way. Number 9 is Hellraiser, the remake. Everyone that I know within the horror community and whatnot said, this is actually a decent one, this, Bryan. You know, if you can get through all the crappy sequels, at least this one's alright. It's a stretch. It is alright in the sense that, yeah, okay, the people who were behind the camera, the technical wizards and whatnot, they know what they're doing. They've got some talent. The people in front of the camera know how to act. It's too long for a start. You know, previous movies, most of the previous movies in this franchise are like 90 minutes at best. It's like a 2-hour movie, and it's too much. It's fine, okay? It's fine. It's overlong. There are annoying little character traits that don't need to be there but are there because, hey, we live in the modern world. And I don't remember a right lot about it, as with most of the Hellraiser movies. It's very competently made. Up to this point, it is probably the best made film on the list, and that's why it gets this high. So, you know, from a technical standpoint, lighting, direction, you know, how to frame shots and whatnot, it's definitely the best film from that regard. So that's why it's as high as it is. But am I ever going to watch it again? No. Am I ever going to watch any of the movies that I've mentioned so far again? No. At number 8 is Hellraiser. It's a good film. Again, I'd probably never watch it again, but it wasn't what I was expecting. So I had memories of I'd seen like a few scenes from Hellraiser when I was a kid, and that was enough to just think, no, this ain't my bag. It's reasonably interesting because it's a lot smaller than I was anticipating. It's essentially just a couple of people in a house doing stuff. It doesn't make it sound like the most engrossing thing, does it? It just plays on the notion of sin, the idea of sin, of you know, going down the rabbit hole of sin and where that's going to lead. Obviously, there's only one place that's going to lead, and the trouble I have with this franchise is that I really struggle with the notion of having characters that would knowingly open this box that's going to take them to hell. Like, from what I gather, there's a chance there that we may show you pleasure, but we may show you pain. And it's like, all right, well, if there's even the slightest chance that that's going to take me to hell, no thanks, you can keep your box. And it's just it pulls me out of any kind of reality the film is trying to set up, and any of these films. But whatever. So you got some demented lunatic psychopath who decides, yeah, he's going to open the box, whatever. And now he's trying to get out of hell, and it's never really clear as to the logistics of that. That okay, if you're going to get out of hell, at some point or another, you are going to die again, which kind of says to me you're going to end up back there. So the whole concept of Hellraiser is just a mess. It never really feels fully thought through. People call this film a classic. I don't think it's a classic. Pinhead is an interesting looking character that you could stick on a VHS cover that would entice people in the video store to go, oh, let's get that. That's exactly what it did, and how it warranted having, what, 11 sequels, 12, I don't know how many he's got now. Flipping heck. 12, is there 12 Hellraiser movies? I don't know, I don't care. But there's no way this film should have spawned that many movies. And number 7 is Saw. This is James Wan's first film, is it? First proper film. It feels to me like a lot more style over substance. He makes fun kind of horror movies, but that's about it. This is competently made, but it does feel a little bit like a poor man's Seven. It wanted to be Seven, but wasn't anywhere near as good. It kind of did the opposite in that it showed you all the brutality, showed you all the violence, but didn't quite match it with the level of character depth and themes. Number 6 is Spiral. This is another Saw film that is all twisty and turny and, oh, we think we're cleverer than we actually are, and hey, I knew who the killer was from about the first 20 minutes into the film, but whatever, you know, it's entertaining. It's fun seeing Chris Rock in this kind of movie, playing a character that you're not really used to seeing him play. He does play it pretty straight, tries to play it pretty serious. There's some big name actors in this, like Samuel L. Jackson, that bring a bit more gravitas to proceedings, makes it feel like it's on a higher plane, shall we say, than the previous movies. But yeah, it's essentially it's a bog standard detective thriller, again in the vein of Seven, but no way near as good. And I just think because the acting, I would say the acting quality, and by this point the technical expertise that's gone into making these movies has improved. That's why it's just slightly above the original Saw film for me. Number 5 is Jigsaw. This is a film made by the Spearig brothers, who made Daybreakers. When it comes to the directing talent that has entered into the fray of the Saw universe, these were like interesting choices. You know, to see their names pop up as directors of a Saw film made me go, oh, okay, now that interests me. And I think story-wise, this isn't anything particularly new by this point. It is a Saw film, but I do think that they tone down the violence and they do concentrate more on the character elements. You know, the characters that are in this trap feel a lot more well-rounded. There's a little bit more nuance to them, and I do care about them a bit more than characters in, say, previous movies. Yeah, and there's enough intrigue in there and a bit of a nice twist at the end that makes me go, you know what, that was solid. Again, it is a Saw film, which means we're not pushing any boundaries here in storytelling, but for what Saw films are, this is easily for me the better end of the spectrum. Number 4 is Saw 2. This for the longest time was my favourite Saw film. I say favourite, it's not a go-to franchise for me. If I have to watch the Saw films, then this would be the one that, you know, until recently, that I would have said, yeah, that's okay. If I've got to watch a Saw film, I'll watch Saw 2, fine. And that's because it essentially does what the first film did, except it gives us a central character that has more of a reason for me to follow him. You know, it's a likable central character for the most part. I feel like, okay, I want this guy to win, and there's enough twists and turns in there that I thought were handled better than the first film. I think it builds the world out a little bit more, so we don't just feel like we're crammed in a basement somewhere because we don't have a budget. Which, while that creates inventive kind of ness, it's not always the most entertaining thing to watch. Whereas here, yeah, the world's expanded a bit more, we're given a bit more budget, so we're able to do a bit more, so there's a bit more action in there. So it's just, yeah, it's the first film, but better, slightly. I'm not talking like the difference between Shawshank and Escape Plan. And number 3 is Wrong Turn, the original Wrong Turn. Never, when we went into this, 31 and 31, you know, and I found out, well, we're doing the Wrong Turn movies, I hadn't revisited Wrong Turn since I'd seen it way back in the cinemas. And when I saw it in the cinema, it was a 1-star film for me, which is why I've never gone back to it since. And anyone who's seen or heard my thoughts on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, I think it was probably as much of a surprise to you as it was to me that it's this high on this list. I don't know if it's just because this contains so much drock that by the time I went to revisit this, it's elevated it, but I felt like there are characters in there that I liked. There's a payoff at the end with regards to those characters that is the kind of payoff that I've already explained I like about these kind of movies, if you're going to do them. It's not a classic, you know, it's a film that's been remade. Normally they remake classics. Now I am actually of the mind that if you're going to do a remake something that wasn't a classic, remake something that was, all right, let's do better, you know. And that's what they did with Wrong Turn. So I'm all for that. So like I say, it's not a great movie, but it is a heck of a lot more entertaining and a heck of a lot more kind of meat on its bones than I'd previously given it credit for. But again, that could just be the result of having watched so much crap over the past 2 months. Number 2 is Saw X or Saw 10. Easily the best Saw film, really, for me. How it took this long to zero in on the main killer and actually give him a backstory and make him the main focus of the film is beyond me. But they've finally done it, 10 films in. Tobin Bell's a really good actor, particularly for this character. I'm not saying he's going to win any Oscars or anything, but he's able to do something with Jigsaw, with this character, who is an abhorrent human being, and yet somehow Bell finds humanity in him. He finds a way to put humanity in him so that you're always on the fence with this guy. You're always torn because you're like, you know what he's done and you know what he's going to continue to do, and yet he kind of has a point. There's no justification, you know, like there's at no point would I look at anything he's done and say, all right, go on then, I'll let you have that one. But there is a certain elegance to his way of thinking that's like, okay, these people do deserve punishment. But yeah, you know, and that's what the film does, is it raises these notions about punishment and essentially heaven and hell. If you want to get on the road to heaven, you need to start making different choices. If you don't want to be on the road to hell, you need to stop what you're doing. You know, with regards to the characters that Jigsaw kind of targets. As with Jigsaw, as with what the Spearig brothers did with their entry in the franchise, it's not as interested in the gore as it is in telling a story with this character and showing you why he is the way he is. Which of course brings me to my number one, which is the remake of Wrong Turn. Now, on any other year of 31 on 31, this is a film, or the kind of film that would appear somewhere around the middle. So this is a 3.5-star film for me. It's easily the best film on this list. It really does have something to say. It really is a look at the modern world, at diversity of culture, and just the way that we now live in a global village. You know, we can no longer afford to take other cultures for granted, because at every turn, everything we say and do runs the risk of offending someone. Because we're not keyed in to their culture. There is a huge lack of understanding between cultures and between people, just, you know, and it's very easy to offend. It's very easy to misjudge. The film deals with those notions pretty well by taking a culture from, you know, that is not advanced, that has not moved on. It's been hidden away in the woods, and you get a bunch of people from the modern world stumbling in with all their modern ideals, modern way of thinking, and you can argue over the rights and wrongs of it. You know, I don't justify any of the violence that happens in the film. I'm not saying you can use this film to look at what some cultures do and say, oh, well, they're fully justified. But I do think it does show why conversation is important. It shows why understanding is important. It shows why context is important. Why judging, I don't know, say the previous generation on things they did 20 years ago against moral standards of today maybe ain't the best way to go. And maybe actually having a conversation to get to the root of things might be better. So, yeah. At the end of the day, it's a slasher film with a lot of violence and detestable things going on. But I do feel like it's at least about something. For me, easily the best film on the list. I think Cara agrees. And yeah, that's it. That's all I've got to say. That's my 31 on 31. Don't forget to check out the videos by the other guys. That's Cody Leach, Sean Chandler, Wiliscredia, and GenEXReviews, Rudy at GenEXReviews. This was a really painful year, and before I commit to coming back next year, before I commit to coming back next year, I'm going to have to see what films are on the chopping block, because I'm not sure I can do this again. This past 2 months has been horrendous. Going down the rabbit hole of these movies. Is it worth it? I'm not sure. My sanity, I'm not sure. Yeah, let me know how you would rank these movies if you've seen them all. Let me know if you need to talk after watching all of these. I can put some kind of support group together. That might be a viable option. It might be necessary. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.